And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday. Yes, Friday, the 30th of July. Well, Brisbane is beautiful out there today, 15 degrees and a sunny day. Well, first of all, without going into the full news, I'll join you in live with the police department making an announcement.
So telling us that they will have people coming in and they will spend money on that bike they wanted when they were too young to afford it, and they're returning to riding after a 10, 20-year absence. Please, when you do that, factor in two other costs. One is the equipment that you wear. It's pointless having a $30,000 motorbike and a $100 helmet. And also factor in going back and getting some lessons from a registered provider who will show you what has changed about the bikes, what has changed about the roads, and what you're doing wrong on a bike. We do this for our police officers every year. Every year our motorcyclists have to re-qualify. We follow them, we film them, we show them how they set themselves up for corners, how they perceive hazards, what they do. What we do know also from our forensic crash experts, the one consistent factor in motorcycle fatalities is the rider runs out of time. They're going too fast, they don't leave themselves options to get out of harm's way. Are there any questions, please?
So you guys played the crackdown over this weekend. What will you be doing out on the roads, from South East Queensland to
Yep, so it's not a crackdown as much as a blitz for us. What we will be doing is, if you're on a bike and you're doing the wrong thing, we'll certainly be telling you about it. But we're also going to pass the messages on to motorcyclists personally to say this is the sort of people that are coming unstuck. This is why they're coming unstuck. I'm firmly in the middle of the group at the moment that are having fatal traffic crashes. I didn't realise that till I looked at the statistics. I honestly thought it was much younger riders out riding to the edge of their limits. It's not. It's older riders, middle-aged riders, on weekends, recreationally riding. That's where we've got the biggest issues. So there'll be two things that motorcyclists will see this weekend. They'll see high visibility police cars and bikes, and they'll see ones that they don't know. So we have a motorcycle fleet of marked up bikes. We also have a fleet of bikes you can't tell that they're a police vehicle until they turn their red and blue lights on. And what you may also find is, if you're on Mount Glorious or on Mount Tambourine or any of the major recreational areas, where you pull up, there's probably going to be some police there delivering safety messages to you personally and answering your questions. It's that type of operation that we want to run.
Sunshine Coast area, is that the worst?
I'll actually give you the statistics on the three areas where we are seeing the most problems at the moment, as compared with the 5-year average, and direct comparison with last year. So in the southeast region, which is Logan and the Gold Coast, we have seen a 250% increase in motorcycle fatalities. In Brisbane, a 100% increase, and on the north coast, the Sunshine Coast, a 71.4% increase. These are massive numbers relative to last year. We believe that a lot of people are getting back onto bikes, going for a ride, making one silly error, leaving themselves no time to recover, and they're coming unstuck.
In these crashes that are happening, are they obviously, like you say, more recreational sort of areas, not just on main roads, or sort of a bit of a mix?
It is a bit of a mix, but we know that the majority of them are occurring during the day on a Saturday, followed by during the day on a Sunday, but they are occurring in equal volume in 60 kilometre an hour zones and 100 kilometre an hour zones. Yep. Yeah. So you're absolutely correct, and the way we track lives lost over time, we can see from the early 1970s right through till today, it is a declining trend. It is still a declining trend with a blip up, and that blip is caused mainly by motorcycles. So there have been 15 more lives lost this year than last year. 11 of the 15 are motorcycles. It's our very obvious problem that we have in the road safety community at the moment.
And I guess from your frustrating. You know, I remember the last time we delivered this same message. It obviously hasn't gone through. Does it get frustrating?
Jordan, it actually did get through. We did enjoy a decline in motorcycle fatalities the last time we had a blitz. The reason we're having the blitz now is have a look at the weather. This is primo motorcycle riding weather, and we know that traditionally August is when we see an increase in motorcycle fatalities. It's exactly why we're doing it right now. But it's incredibly frustrating. Just spare a thought for the ambos that have to do this, the police that have to deliver the death message, the coroner that has to write these.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the and if you're trying to find our channel today, we went live on my page, but it's now been said on Australian Indian Radio page as well. Sorry about that. Well, right now, let's move on and take a look at what else is happening. Well, Victoria recording 239 new cases.
Sydney is falling deeper and deeper into lockdown as cases go up and up.
Based on those numbers, we can only assume that things are likely to get worse before they get better.
This level of cases, we are going to continue to see further deaths. And sadly, too many elderly people in our community are not protected.
The hot zone in the city's west and southwest has now expanded to include 8 local government areas, with the toughest restrictions anywhere in Greater Sydney.
These 8 local government areas that are now in almost total lockdown, have some very, very challenging times to come in the next few weeks.
There are a lot of angry people. None of us feel like we have any control. And with every new announcement and every new thing, it seems like we lose more control.
Western Sydney makes up the nation's 3rd largest economy, worth about $100 billion. A major manufacturing centre and home to distribution hubs that serve the nation, Western Sydney has been described as the engine room of the New South Wales economy.
We think that employment in New South Wales could fall by 300,000 over a couple of months, but those sort of figures do give you an idea of just how many people will not be going to work while we're in this lockdown.
The workforce here is highly mobile, with many travelling far and wide across Sydney. That increases the risk of spreading COVID, and authorised workers are now required to be tested every 3 days if they work outside their area. Pharmacist Mariam Ghanim travels between suburbs and gets up early to be tested.
On testing days, I will generally do them before 6 a.m. because that's when I go to the 24-hour clinic because I know there is no wait time. I think for the most part, there's general frustration and confusion. Confusion in that, at the beginning there was a lot of confusion about who needed to be tested, why you could leave your LGA, when testing requirements started.
For casual or shift workers, it may prove more difficult as they struggle to find time in their day to get tested.
I think we need to look at how these communities are being supported, their livelihoods being threatened.
COVID spreads anywhere, but it's ripped through Western Sydney, where households are larger and incomes are lower.
The virus didn't start in southwest Sydney. It had been brought from people elsewhere in Sydney, and yet we were the ones that were bearing the brunt of the impact. And we're continuing to bear the brunt of the impact.
In Bondi, where the outbreak began, the average household size is 2.2, with an income of more than $2,000 per week. The top ancestry is English. That compares with the hotspot of Fairfield in the west, which has a household size of 3.3 and an income of more than $1,000 per week. The top ancestry, Vietnamese.
They don't have the luxury of having 2 months worth of savings that they can draw upon.
So this is my home and pretty much has been my world for the period of the lockdown. And
it's been a challenging time for Ben Ho, who lives in the Fairfield area and works from home.
And this is my missus, my wife. It's starting to, cause anxiety for all of us. My son, Felix.
3 generations live here under the one roof. And while Ben's in-laws have had their first dose vaccination, the family still takes precautions.
And also my mother-in-law as well. When they announced the first jab, my entitlement, I signed up straight away. So we're being very, very cautious.
Sydney's West is home to large migrant communities, and Ben says the messages from state and federal governments have been confusing for many.
I've seen some announcements that happen in the morning, and then there's a different one, like in the afternoon or evening. English is second language in a lot of the households here, and sometimes there is no second language. I think the most unclear thing is around the vaccines.
What's also worrying the government is the slow take-up of the vaccine in the hotspot areas. Vaccination rates are below average compared to other parts of Sydney.
The evidence is there. If you want to protect those you love the most, not only do you need to respect the health orders, but also encourage vaccination.
I'm just going to check the temperature, okay?
Thank you.
At Dr Donghua's clinic in Fairfield, the fear of catching COVID appears to have encouraged more people to get vaccinated.
Just give you some hand sanitizer, okay?
This is driving a lot of demand for vaccinations at the moment. A lot of demand is for the Pfizer vaccine, but we are seeing a lot of surge in demand for the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Dr Hua also says the federal health advice expanding AstraZeneca to adults over 18 is helping increase vaccination rates.
You happy to go ahead?
There is a lot of mixed messaging, a lot of confusion amongst the community. There has been a fair number of patients under 40 that are coming for the vaccine, particularly those who are not eligible for Pfizer, and they don't know when they're going to get the Pfizer vaccines because they could be waiting up to 6 months before they get the vaccine. So they want the protection now.
The government.
Well, the testing needs to be done, and testing needs to be done now as opposed to those public demand that things need to be done because it is affecting the families across the grid. So regardless of your nationality, your background, it is affecting everyone. Well, right now let's take a look at Queensland and where we have identified one case in the school, and it is unknown how the student would have got that case because the family have not been going out anywhere.
What we do know is that it is a 17-year-old female. She's a student at Indooroopilly State High School, and that she became unwell yesterday and went and got tested, and overnight her result has come back positive. We are testing her family members. It's a family of 5. They live at Turinga. We're aware and we're treating this as if the young lady was infectious from the 27th. So she's been in the community for 3 days and at school for 2 days. So I understand the school has already notified families and it closed down for a deep clean. There is very little more information at this stage, so we need to still identify exposure sites. At this point, we understand the family hasn't travelled anywhere. And we are still to get the genome sequencing to find out what variant it is and also whether it's linked to any other cases in Queensland or Australia.
So one new community acquired case, which is quite concerning because I'm struggling to understand how she's acquired it, so we'll have to wait till we get whole genome sequencing results back later today to be able to work out from where she's got this. So we do know that we have had 13 incursions of the virus into Queensland over the last 6 weeks, and we know that in any particular outbreak someone can get infected, not have symptoms and then spread the virus to someone else, which is why it's critically important that we all remain very, very cautious until the vast majority of people have been able to be vaccinated.
So there we go. All you need is one new case, and the scenario all of a sudden changes as well. But as the Chief Health Officer has mentioned, that it is for us to remain very vigilant, remain very careful. I know a lot of functions and events are taking place. People are going to all the places, and many things do happen. when you're going out to functions and events, you really need to be careful, when you're mixing with people, and these days we see that lots of functions have reconvened. But as I mentioned before, that we really need to be vigilant. We need to be careful and need to remain safe and follow all those rules. The masks, when out in the public, it should just be mandatory. It sort of becomes a second nature. To me, if I ever sleep out without the mask, it feels like you're missing something, or you're naked. It feels that way. You feel so bored. You run back in and get your mask back on. It should be that way, that it becomes like second nature to you. Well, right now we've had a look at New South Wales, we had a look at Queensland. Let's take a look at Western Australia.
Despite closing the borders with most other states and territories, the threat of COVID-19 coming ashore remains in Western Australia. Another ship with COVID-positive crew members on board and a growing outbreak over east has put the state on edge.
It is a problem. It is a problem. We're going to have to look at what we do about this. So obviously that's an examination we're currently going through.
But for months now, serious concerns have been raised about the state of Western Australia's hospital system.
Perth's health system is at breaking point with a COVID
and its ability to cope with a COVID outbreak.
To be honest, most departments are running at almost disaster level, at least several times a week. Everyone's feeling exhausted and burnt out, and we haven't had a COVID outbreak in WA, and it kind of frightens me to think how our staff would cope if we did.
Dr Peter Alali is an emergency physician and is the WA Faculty Chair for the Australasian College for Emergency Medicine. He told 7:30 the system is running at a dangerous level, with code yellows or internal disasters being called frequently.
To have it for overcrowding in the 21st century in one of the richest countries in the world is scandalous, to be honest. It's a fixable problem.
WA ambulances spent more than 5,000 hours waiting to unload patients at emergency departments last month. The state government has blamed the crisis on a combination of factors, including what it says is more mental health presentations.
Look, we are under a lot of pressure, and every health jurisdiction in Australia is feeling that pressure as well.
It's a system under pressure, and it's evident in the incident that happened to Aishwarya's family.
At Easter, 7-year-old Aishwarya Aswath died after waiting for 2 hours for emergency help at Perth Children's Hospital, prompting a fiery rally from outraged medical staff.
So we're looking at a number of ways that we can continue to make sure that we ease that pressure on our healthcare workers. Firstly, around a significant recruitment drive of nurses.
WA Health told 7:30 the system pressures are complex and there is an ongoing issue with hospitals caring for people who could be treated by a GP. Is WA's tough approach when it comes to lockdowns and hard borders a direct reflection on the hospital system?
No, we act on the basis of the health advice of the Chief Health Officer. But the best way we can support our hospital system during a pandemic is to control these outbreaks so we don't transfer that pressure onto the hospital systems themselves.
Next, please. The department says plans have been made if there is an outbreak of COVID, including reducing elective surgeries. Curtin University infectious diseases expert Professor Archie Clements says as the pandemic drags on, it's likely WA will continue to use its isolation to its advantage, including lengthy border closures.
Lengthy border closures are on the pipeline, and as we can see that, ships do need to come in. Australia does need its import and export, to survive, to keep the economic cycle running as well. But as we can see, it is quite clear that the cases have travelled from people to people, and when the pandemic had erupted, if it was controlled and borders closed then with all the countries, all international travel completely banned, it could have been more easily controlled, if it had not spread from one country to another to another. So, from one country to another, it would have, the only way it could have gone from one country to another country is someone taking it with them. So, that's how it's gone to all the countries. Right now, we're looking at so many different measures, to look at it, but we will later on in today's series, we will look at how is it going to affect us, because COVID-19 is here to stay. But right now, we've looked at New South Wales, Western Australia and Queensland. Right now, let's take a look at Tasmania, where there's a lot of protest about the salmon farming.
We're on the eastern side of Bruny Island, but if you look out to the east, it's basically open ocean. Next stop is Antarctica and New Zealand.
About 30 kilometres from Hobart, Storm Bay is the site of one of the most ambitious and significant salmon farming expansions in Australia's history.
So we've got 4 leases along here. The ones right down the far south we haven't actually farmed yet.
Tasmanian salmon is a $1 billion industry, directly employing about 2,000 people and trading on Tasmania's clean, green image. But the industry is under attack over its environmental record.
There's one of the big misconceptions people have is that it's wall-to-wall pens. But when they get out here, they're just amazed at how long it takes to actually get from one lease to another.
Steve Percival has been working in Tasmania's fish farming industry for 30 years. He's a general manager at Huon Aquaculture, but speaking on behalf of the entire industry.
There is this tendency that if anything's wrong, it's to do with the salmon industry, but there's a lot of misinformation, inaccuracy there.
The Tasmanian salmon industry is one big lie. You can't trade on the beauty and wonder of a place like Tasmania when your product is in the process of destroying that very beauty and wonder.
For nearly 25 years, Richard Flanagan wrote his novels at his holiday house on Bruny Island, south of Hobart. But the Booker Prize winner recently sold his shack. He couldn't bear to write there after salmon farming ramped up nearby.
Many years ago, the crayfish vanished, the abalone vanished, the penguins vanished, and then the fish that you'd go out and catch started disappearing. Algae and slime started appearing.
Flanagan's latest book accuses the salmon industry of environmental destruction and harsh animal management practices. He quotes scientists, residents and recreational fishers worried about nutrient discharge and algal blooms threatening local waterways.
With climate change, there are things that are changing, and it's important that we look at all the factors because often the salmon industry is a very small component or a non-component of the issue.
This year.
So that is once again another debate that needs to be had, because when we look at trees, cutting down trees, then people said, okay, renewable, we will be planting more trees instead. Plantation, of course, timber that is made out of the plantation pine that they call, and all of those kind of things. Prawns, the same, prawn farmings, and of course, then when we look at salmon for now in Tasmania, the salmon farming, so they mess bread and then they farmed, but to some people that could be destroying and affecting, the same as the life exports of animals, even though that might be quite okay and norm with one, and the others then protest about that. But right now, let's moving on. Let's once again look at New South Wales in the next 2 reports. One is what are the new restrictions, and of course, in the second report, we'll see whether it goes far enough, and what's the situation with the schools reopening.
A bright spot on a dark day.
It's a record Sydney and the state can be proud of, more than 110,000 tests.
Regrettably, we also had quite a large increase in the number of cases overnight.
239. The curve is getting steeper. And as contact tracers are swamped, the number of mystery cases is also skyrocketing.
We can only assume that things are likely to get worse before they get better, given the quantum of people infectious in the community.
So the rules will be getting even stricter. In the 8 council areas of concern, masks will be mandatory everywhere except home. That includes outdoors.
Well, you have to do what you have to do, to keep safe and keep the community safe. We have to stick to the rules.
Yeah, it's good. I think so. Yeah, everyone have to wear a mask.
If you live in one of the hotspots, you'll also be spending more time closer to home. A 5-kilometre limit for shopping and exercise will be enforced.
We have harsher restrictions in place than any other state has ever had.
Some are struggling to keep up with all the changes. Kim Bong says she's still explaining the basics to customers.
Well, she may be explaining the basic to customers, but, with those restrictions in place, the schools which are going to be opening in New South Wales also causes a bit of concern, as we'll see from this new report.
Dr. Chant has said that the greatest contributors to transmission are work sites and human interaction. Our schools are work sites and our business is human interaction. This announcement could effectively see hundreds of young adults and teachers on school sites mingling together. It defies logic, it defies the science. And of course, this announcement was made following days of increasing cases. We've had cases increasing every single day over the last 3 or 4 days. Indeed, 5 days ago, the Premier herself described the situation in New South Wales as a national emergency. And 3 or 4 days later, as numbers were climbing, and today's numbers are 239.
Okay, so is your concern greater for the teachers or for the students who are completing their final exams in year of school?
Our concern is for our entire school community. Our concerns are for our students, our concerns are clearly for our teachers, but also our entire school communities. Work sites are the greatest contributors to transmission. And here we are, an announcement that will see hundreds of young people and teachers gather together. Under the current advice provided by Health and the numbers provided by Health show us that 25% of all cases are amongst young people under the age of 19. That's 25% of cases. The Delta strain is, as again, to use the Premier's own words, a game changer. Today she said that the situation will only get worse. And yet we're still seeing this announcement by the Premier.
So this affects about 51,000 Year 12 students who
76,000.
76,000 students. Okay, thank you for correcting me on that. What is the alternative given that they face their final exam so soon?
This is a tragic situation for Year 12 students, and we care deeply about its impact on our Year 12 students, knowing full well they were impacted last year as well because of the first wave. There are 76,000 statewide. There's 21,000 students in the 8 LGAs that have gone under even tighter lockdown today. And of course, we can't forget them almost 2,000 teachers in those 8 LGAs and the 6,500 teachers across the state.
Okay, so what's the alternative for them? That was the question.
Well, the alternative is that we need to put their health and safety first. There is an assumption in your question that nothing is happening in the intervening period. Teachers are working tirelessly, preparing lessons to ensure that learning continues through online and remote learning procedures. We care for our students because we are the ones, our teachers are the ones that have invested in them for 13 years. We care.
And of course, they do care. And as I mentioned even yesterday or day before yesterday about the students, that they would be the ones hard done in this case. 2 years in a row, that is a major disruption to their studies. In a normal course of studies, you go through your year by year as you walk your way up. But with this kind of disruptions in that it is quite unsure, about your future, about your studies and moving ahead. There are so many different scenarios that have been put forward that might help, but once again, it's just not the same. It's never the same, even for a lot of international students who have paid fees, but they are now offered online studies, and they're sitting there, but they don't have that experience, the experience of being in the class, and especially if you're coming from overseas, coming to Australia, you need that Australian experience, to have that feel. That's why you paid for that much, otherwise you could be studying anywhere. So, the students are hard done in this case. Looking at our local students, Year 12s especially, as he mentioned, I really feel for them, and even the younger ones, the younger students as well, any students in this case in the tertiary system as well, because of that disruption, your normal course of study is disrupted, so it's never going to be the same. Well, right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events, and as we know, preparations are well underway for Go Pure Queensland's India Day Fair.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Angela Owen, and it's with great pleasure once again that I throw my support behind India Day Fair to be held this year on the 15th of August at Suncorp Piazza at South Bank in Brisbane. This is for many years, and it is wonderful to know that it is continuing and growing from strength to strength.
Hello everyone, my name is Ishana Chandra, and I would like to invite you to Go Pure Queensland's India Day Fair at South Bank Piazza on the 15th of August. A free, fun-filled family event celebrating India's independence, a new venue and bigger, bolder programming. See you all there!
That's right. Well, love to see you all there at India Day Fair, and the plans are going ahead with the function under the COVID restrictions, and that's why the venue has been chosen where we can produce and run the event in a controlled environment. Right now, let's take a look at all the other functions and events taking place. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you on this Friday, the 30th of July. Well, right now it's gone up another 2 degrees and it's 17 degrees and sunny as we look out the window of our studios. Beautiful day here in Brisbane. Well, don't forget that if you're going to functions and events, do take care. Make sure that you follow all those rules and restrictions, and of course obey those health and safety orders that have been put out. It is in the best interest of yourself and the community at large. So do the right thing. Do what is required in the community interest. And of course, always take care when you're out and about in functions and events. Of course, there are organizations, there are groups who need to keep doing what they're doing. It is very hard for them to try and arrange everything under the current circumstances. But as we have seen that our community is quite resilient and they are quite adaptive as well. So they have managed to adapt to the circumstances and then do things as required with the rules and regulations of the current time. And under the current restrictive circumstances, they managed to still go ahead with their functions and events, which is quite good to see. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have any topic that you'd like to discuss, we'd love to have you on the show. And of course, if you have any functions and events, and if you're looking for media partners, happy to talk to you as well. And don't forget that the August issue of the newspaper is going to be finalized very soon. So if you have any submissions, make sure that they are in. And if you are looking at advertising, make sure that you contact Rajni as soon as you can, because the deadline is almost up. So, until tomorrow is goodbye for me. Don't forget that tomorrow we'll bring to you the weekend roundup, the roundup of what's happened on the weekend. We will do that tomorrow at 10 a.m. right here on this station. So until then, it's goodbye from me. Until tomorrow, enjoy the rest of the day, but most importantly, do remain safe.